Hello and greetings from the Center for Contemporary Mysticism. My name is Joe Irwin, and I'm pleased to bring you another online program. Whether you're joining us live as we're recording the program or seeing it later in a recorded session, we're happy to have you with us. I think we have about 9 online programs so far since the pandemic began. They're all on our website, many different wonderful topics, so we hope you will check those out as well. We not only have programs in the past, but we have some planned coming up later this fall. In addition to today's program, we have one next month called Uniting Mysticism and Activism for Social Change. So we are pleased to have you with us, and we hope you will check out all of the programs. Today, we're especially blessed to have back Dr. Linda Backman from Colorado. Linda has been at our center 2 other times in 2015 and 2017 and was scheduled to be with us today in person, but of course that couldn't happen. So she has graciously agreed to join us from Colorado. Linda is a nationally renowned author and regression therapist and psychologist with over 40 years of private practice. And she'll be bringing us a program entitled Live the Life That Is Calling You. She'll help us see how a better understanding of our soul's evolution can help us navigate during these times of crisis and change and grief. It will be followed by a question and answer session, so have your questions ready after Linda shares her presentation for a while, and we'll be able to dialogue with her. So Linda, thank you so much for being with us. We'll invite you to come on board and maybe tell us a little about where you're coming from and what you have to offer today. It's a great privilege to have you with us. Linda.
You know, or maybe most of you know, I live in the Boulder, Colorado area. It's a beautiful area. If you've never been here before, we're struggling mightily in Colorado, as is the case in other states, including California. But we're struggling mightily with forest fires. And we currently have the largest forest fire in Colorado history that's been burning since August. But just last evening, and this is all kind of relates to what I'm talking about. That's why I'm bringing this up. Last evening, a new fire broke out in the northwest, basically end of Boulder, up in the foothills. Boulder sits tucked into the foothills of the Rockies. And so Earl and I are monitoring this. My husband Earl and I are monitoring this. We do not live in the foothills, but we have dear friends and people that we know well that live up there. So what is that about? Well, clearly that's about global warming. It's about taking care of this planet, taking care of Gaia. That has a lot to do with, what are we being called to and what's happening currently. So just to kind of set the stage, set the foundation, in case you don't know very much about me and my work, before I fell into this type of spiritual work, 27, someone the other day said to me, Linda, it's been almost 30 years that you've been doing this work. And I thought, oh my goodness, wow, that was surprising to me. So I was a psychologist once upon a time in general conventional private practice. And then in the early 90s, I fell into the understanding of who are we as a soul, what happens in our past lives, how do we plan our lives? And that's been my work for these 27, 28 years. So just kind of continuing on a little bit with foundation, I learned how to guide not just past life regression, but soul regression. And what that basically means is I've been listening to clients for all these years, learning about why do we evolve, where do we come from, how do we plan our lives, how do we cope with complicated situations. I'm going to be talking about COVID and how that relates to our calling right now. So I've gained a perspective, I'll just say, of who are we as a soul. And I'll be sharing with you not just who are we as a soul in these bodies in life today, who are you as a soul in the higher realm? Who are you as a soul at all times at the level of higher self? Okay. So, simple explanation is that we are essentially, as a soul, required to evolve. A lot of you probably know this. The soul is not perfect. Contrary to, we might say, old world dogmatic beliefs that are taught in some cases, the soul is like the child that goes to school. The soul is like the our means of learning is stepping into the classroom called body, and moving through, challenges, gifts, beautiful experiences, complicated experiences in order to grow and evolve. So my hunch is, and I always say this, if you decided you wanted to come listen to me chat with you today, and I guess I would also say, if you are, though some of you may not be involved with the Philadelphia Center for Contemporary Mysticism, you may be coming in because you learned about this talk today through my social media and all of that. But nonetheless, if you're involved with something that we might label as spiritual or mystical, you're not a young soul, or you wouldn't be interested in that. So what happens when you're not a young soul? That means that you've worked on a lot of learning in past lives. You've gained a fair amount of soul accomplishment in those lives, and that's what we call dharma. But because when we come into body on Earth, we have free will. That's one of the unique qualities of Earth incarnation. If we're still coming into body, like me, like you, any of you, then you have karma to balance. So you came into body to do both. You came into body to continue evolving, balancing karma, and but basically also bringing your dharma, bringing your learning, and that's how our past lives affect our current life. So, live the life that is calling you. What does that mean? Okay. Now I want to just kind of move this into, what about life today? What about COVID? What about global warming? What about all the political challenges that are going on our planet? I would guess that a lot of you have been experiencing many of the things at times that I experienced, that my husband and I experienced, that my clients and people that take courses with me experience. And that is, these are challenging times. These are times where, maybe there's some of you that have even had the COVID-19 virus. Certainly, I would imagine all of us have known someone with the COVID-19 virus, and it's like, so what's this about? Okay, so I'll start there. Sometimes people ask me, well, Linda, did the spiritual realm, did the higher realm create COVID for some reason? My understanding is no. COVID, I won't go off into all the theories of, how we think COVID came to be in China. But I think all of us know it is a China that happened. It began in China and then spread to other parts of the world. What's key is, how do we cope with it? What's key is, what do we do about it? Okay. And I bet a lot of you have experienced much of what I have. It's sometimes I'm tired of dealing with it. Sometimes I'm wondering will I wear a mask outside the rest of my life? No, I don't think I will. But the key is, guides in the higher realm are observing each of us and us as a community. And I don't mean just us, in this group today, here with the center. What are we doing on the planet about it? how are we coping with it? When you at times just feel so tired of dealing with it, or maybe you have some minor symptoms and it's frightening, and it's like, what's wrong with me? Is this the beginning of COVID? Or like me, my entire work life, maybe entire is not quite the right word, but my work life has changed dramatically because I used to travel 50% of the time. I have children and grandchildren. Fortunately, I can see the ones that live close. We're all being very COVID cautious, but the ones that live a couple thousand miles away, we're not sure when we will see them until this calms down. So, how are you dealing with the life that's calling you? What is the life that's calling you? Is it tied to helping others cope with this virus? Is it tied to being politically active and working on creating change? Is it tied to something has changed dramatically for you in your life right now, and you're kind of scratching your head thinking, maybe I don't want to go back to, when I can go back into the office, maybe I don't want to go back to that job. Have you had to dig deeper and find a spiritual perspective? And now, and I'm discovering this a lot with the people the clients that I work with. It's like, in order to cope right now, I think most of us are finding we have to go deeper. We have to find a deeper perspective. Well, what does that mean? And how does that change you? Have you decided you've got to have more meditation in your life? Have you decided you need to change a relationship in your life? Have you, do you have a friend, a family member, a romantic partner, and they're dealing very differently with the challenges of now than you, and you want to be in, whether it's romantic partnership or friendship, you want to be around people who are working to have a more broad-based perspective, who are working to tie into spiritual guidance to know what to do. So let's talk about, I'm sitting here with notes beside me, and all these topics are just kind of ticking through my brain. Yeah, and obviously everybody keep thinking about your questions. We'll get to questions. Yeah, as you think about how do you tie in, how do you tap in to intuitive guidance? Okay, different ways to put this. I'll give you an example in my own life. So COVID happened. I was canceling this trip and canceling that trip. And then I started brainstorming new ways to do my work, new ways to tie in with people, more virtual ways to do the work that I do. In some ways, I have found it extremely rewarding. I get to be home more. I like where I live. I like my house. I like where I live in Colorado. So I'm home more. I have a much more lovely, it's gardening time's about over, as I'm sure it is for all of you, wherever you live. But I've had a lot more time outside to soak up the out of doors, to take care of the exterior and interior of my house, and my life. Is that happening for you? I've had actually more time with my daughter and her family because, as I said, they're COVID cautious and we don't go to them. It's safer having them come to us. We've had longer dinners. We've had more barbecues outside. I've been doing more writing. Is this happening to you? On the other hand, how are you coping with, don't go inside that restaurant, it's not safe. Don't go into that crowd, it's not safe. Are you helping other people? accept and deal with these kinds of things. So the way we hear our guidance is a variety of ways. In some cases, it's people and events that show up in our life. In other cases, it's listening to your own intuition. Now, a lot of people, I think, get confused about how to listen to their intuition. Okay. I certainly used to years ago. Years ago, I didn't think I was intuitive at all. But let me just kind of give a little kind of a package picture, if you will, of about 4 ways that you all are potentially intuitive. Okay. So first of all, I hope you have some kind of spiritual practice. It doesn't matter what it is. It might be walking. It might be music. It might be watching the sun come up or the sun go down. It might be formal meditation. Think for a second about yourselves. Are you primarily visual with your intuition? Eyes closed or even eyes open? Do you get visual cues? Do you at times see an image in your mind and wonder where that's coming from? If you're trying to tap into your own past lives, do you get an image? Do you get a picture in your mind of someone you haven't talked to in 6 to 9 months, and you keep getting that image? That probably means you need to reach out to them. So some of us are visually intuitive. Some of us are not visually intuitive. Some of us, and we have to learn how to cope with all of this, some of us are emotion-based with our intuition. Do you at times start having feelings, emotions, and you say to yourself, actually this happened, I'll give you a quick example. It happened 2 days ago. My husband and I were home. The woman that comes every 2 weeks to clean our house came to clean our house. And by the time she left, Earl and I said to each other, how are you feeling? And we both said, nervous, edgy, kind of worried, unhappy. And we hadn't felt that way before she came into the house. Now, this is not her fault by any means. Well, we began to suspect that we had tapped into her emotions and that something was worrying her and bothering her. And because she's our regular house cleaner, and of course she cleans our house from, top to bottom, her energy's here. So we had to put our finger on that's what was going on. And then we had to intend to release it. And it worked. That worked. Some of my clients go into the first scene of a past life, and they don't get any pictures in their mind. They get emotion. So some of us are visual with intuition. Some of us are emotion-based. Some of us are body-centered. Sometimes we get a headache, a side ache, a stomach ache. There's nothing wrong with us, but someone's happening for someone who's close to us. We're worried about something and it's showing up as a symptom in our body. I have clients go into past lives and they're feeling the physical symptom of what happened in the past in their current body, and they need to let it go. Sometimes they've been feeling it for years and they didn't know what it was. Okay. Lastly, and this one's really important because this is going to fit for many, many, many of you. We're intuitive with the left hemisphere of our brain. We get intuitive information through words, phrases, thoughts, sentences. We think we're just making up that cognitive information. We're not. It's intuitive guidance. Sometimes my spiritual guides just talk to me in my mind, talk to me in my head. Okay? So, are you visual or not? Are you emotion-based or not? Are you body-centered or not? Are you cognitive? That's how intuition works. Normally, we're stronger in 1 or 2 of those capabilities and less strong in others. Okay? Okay, I want to go back for a second to coping with the times of now. What are we trying to figure out? What are our spiritual guides observing with us in terms of how are we responding? And probably it's pretty clear to most of you. You're probably, everybody in this group is spiritually oriented. Are we taking care of the other person? I'm certainly age-wise in the high-risk category for COVID. Fortunately, knock on wood, here on my desk, I don't have any underlying health issues. But if I was 25 or 30 or 35 or 40 or whatever, would I be cautious in terms of COVID and wearing a mask so I could protect others? As we look at all the issues on our planet, as we look at global warming, are we doing what we can in terms of global warming, in terms of taking care of plants, taking care of the animals? In other words, are we looking at humanity's need to evolve? I think, without waxing political with any of you, that's a whole nother complicated topic. Are we thinking about the other person? Are we focusing on we're all important, no matter what our persuasion might be? We're all of value. So what are you called to do in that respect? Are you called to be involved in a political campaign? Are you called to be involved in helping your neighbor understand organic gardening? Are you called to, and I know this is, as I know Joe is listening, are you called to help your family because of COVID? What's calling you? And then, even I don't want to say bigger picture, taking care of family is part of bigger picture. Think back, go all the way back just to January of 2020. And I'm sure some of us go, oh my gosh, can I think back that far? Life seemed different back in January 2020. What in your life either has changed, even if you had no control over the change? What did you choose to change? And what have you thought about changing and you haven't taken the time to step into it? Keep focusing on how your life needs to be moving farther along your journey of your soul's evolution and the evolution of humanity. You planned your life before you came into body. Now, is everything set in stone? No. But you planned your life. And I often have clients where they come in, I interview them, I get to know them, and they'll say complicated things like, I had a life-threatening illness when I was age 4. My father walked out when I was 12. I was married, and at age 37, my spouse died, or, whatever. And those clients will say to me, so I must be a fairly young soul, Linda. I must be a fairly unevolved soul. The answer is no, it's the opposite. It means you are an evolved soul, and two things happened when you were planning your current life. You agreed to clean up more karma faster, or you agreed to serve more as a teacher on the planet. Okay. Let me add in just a little bit more. I could talk about this topic for a long, long time. Important topic. I have learned through my years of regression that there are 3, let's put it this way, and you can put whatever word you want to fit into this: God, the Creator, Great Spirit, the Tao. There are many beautiful terms in other languages. A term I often like to use is the Shekhinah. It's an aspect of God. The creator, and this has come through regression, I didn't pull this out of the air, the divine essentially has created three, you might say, types of souls, okay? There are souls created to incarnate and evolve primarily on Earth. And that can mean you can have hundreds, if not 1,000 or more, Earth lives intending to evolve. And that's here on Earth and in these human bodies is where you spend the bulk of your incarnations. That's what I call an Earth-based soul, not an earth-bound soul. That's a different term. Earth-based soul. Okay. There are two more categories, and some of you are going to fit into perhaps these other two categories. There's another category, and these categories are separate, okay? For the most part, see them as separate. There are souls that are created primarily to incarnate not on Earth, or what I call interplanetary. These are souls that come from the celestial realm, from a place, from a celestial realm, from a spiritual realm not tied to the frequency of Earth. They are called interplanetary souls. You are highly wise. You come from non-Earth locations that are extremely evolved, and you come into body on Earth. I've learned this from my clients, okay? My interplanetary clients. You come to Earth to bring the advancement of your culture. You have a healthier, you come from a healthy lifestyle. You come from a healthy place in the higher realm, and you come to Earth, and you embody from birth on Earth. What happens for these souls, these people, is that they're extremely wise, extremely advanced, and yet sometimes struggle with allergies, health issues, autoimmune disorders, sometimes the autistic spectrum, emotional challenges, learning differences, and yet they're highly evolved. That's an interplanetary soul. If you want to learn more about those souls, go to Amazon or contact me through my website. Souls on Earth is my third book. It is completely filled with client material from interplanetary souls. Third category, okay? The Creator has created souls that are angelic realm souls. Angelic realm souls serve the divine. And I'm trying to think how to make this simple, because it's not too terribly simple. Angelic realm souls are highly evolved, and if they incarnate, as they do on occasion, they come to Earth. And they incarnate because they bring a purity, and I'm going to use language and words, but they create a purity that is almost beyond language but the words I'm going to use are love and wisdom. These are people that are highly evolved souls coming from the angelic realm, and they bring love and wisdom to the planet. So think about that, because that may help each of you understand yourself. So just hang on a minute, bear with me here. There's just a couple of other things I want to say before we go to questions and answers. Excuse me. I want to talk about souls leaving the planet. Okay. We are in a time period now, obviously, and extremely sad. We have people dying from COVID. Those are not necessarily, and most of the time, not souls that were ready to leave. It varies. But we also have, I'm convinced this is the case, some people / souls leaving the planet right now. Two reasons. It may be that life has become awfully challenging because of our times, but also important to say, some souls are leaving because, and I don't mean to minimize anyone's grief. Grief and loss is terribly difficult when you have a loved one who has passed. In some cases, these souls are needed on the other side because the other side serves as guidance to us. So there are some souls, and especially I think some of these highly, there are a lot of public figures of late that are leaving. I'm not going to say I know why. Let's use John Lewis as an example. Do I know for sure the reason why John Lewis passed recently? No, I don't. On the other hand, I am fully convinced he's a highly evolved soul, and I think it's quite possible his wisdom was needed on the other side. So, okay, one more topic, and then we'll shift into questions and answers. When you're in body, so I use myself as an example just to make it easy. So when I came into body as Linda, I brought, think about your soul energy like a pie. So here's a full pie. Okay. When you come into body, you cut a slice out of that pie, just like you literally cut a slice of a regular pie. And that's the soul energy that runs your car called body when you're born. The rest of your soul energy is your higher self that remains in the spiritual realm at all times. Okay. When you're in body, your higher self, your soul self in the higher realm, has responsibility. The spiritual realm, and whether you're earth-based, interplanetary, or angelic realm, I call that EB, IP, and AR, no matter what type of soul, no matter what your soul origin is, your soul carries responsibility and commitment in the spiritual realm tied to Earth or tied to your interplanetary home location or tied to the angelic realm. So, sometimes people will ask me, well, Linda, my beloved best friend died 2 months ago. I'm 60 some odd years old, for instance, and my friend was, also 63 or whatever. When I die, will she be there? When I die, will he be there to help me cross over? The answer is yes, because even if that soul has reincarnated, we always have a higher self. Right now, our higher selves, for people like all of you listening, right now, our higher selves are, charged, mandated to try to assist the earth with the struggles that are going on. Okay? As more experienced souls, we may have already become what you would call a junior spiritual guide. But nonetheless, as more experienced souls, we are involved on the other side with trying to guide Earth to make the best decisions, guide Earth to move forward. So please don't think that, sometimes people will say to me, well, Linda, I think I'm almost done with my incarnations and then I'll just be done. The truth is that's not the way it works. It's not the way it works. So, okay. Well, I think I have chattered on long enough. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Joe, and we can shift now to questions and I'll do my very best to answer.
That sounds great. So we have a number of folks, attendees, and we would ask you, if you would, to click on raise your hand if you have a question or a comment you would like to offer. we do have a number of people attending today, so we ask our folks who are asking a question or offering a comment to keep it to about 3 minutes. We even have a little timer. You could hear a bell. But, the goal is to have an opportunity to chat with Linda, ask questions, offer comments, or maybe even your own experiences. So do any of you have questions? I'll look for somebody to raise your hand and we'll invite you to come on. I thought I might bring one of our board members, who is Patricia Pierce, and she often does interviews. And so I thought I would bring her on to see if she would like to join us. She might have some questions or some dialogue or conversation with Linda. So Patricia, if you would, feel free to offer anything you would like while we're seeing if others might have questions. There you are. I surprised her.
Fabulous. I really, really enjoyed your presentation. Boy, questions. Oh my gosh. I don't really have a question. I'm just very grateful for everything that you offered. And of course it raises personal questions for me. Like, which of these types of souls am I? So it's left me very, very curious, actually, about it all. And I guess my question would be, for people who want to explore this more in their own lives, how do they do that? And how might they do that with you?
Okay, that's great. And maybe I'll just give you, Patricia, a few things to think about that, and not just you, obviously everybody, that will help people begin to think about, which type of soul they might be. Well, people can find me. Easiest ways, go to my website, ravenheartcenter.com, raven like the bird, heart like the heart in your chest, center, ravenheartcenter.com. I am guiding regression, and this is one of the surprises to me vis-a-vis COVID. I'm guiding 2 types of regression. People can read about that on my website, past life regression and between lives soul regression. Between lives regression includes past life regression, and we work at the soul level of the client, and the client brings questions to the session. So I'm doing all of that. It's working very well remotely. I'm seeing a few, on occasion, live clients here in Colorado if they're following COVID guidelines, but I'm doing a lot of work remotely. So regression, soul regression is an option for people. I also guide what I call spiritual mentoring, and spiritual mentoring is basically it's counseling from a spiritual perspective. It's sitting down and doing a counseling session, but it's from the vantage point of not just conventional counseling. Who is the client as a soul? What is causing certain things in your life to occur, certain people, certain challenges, looking at life's decisions from a soul perspective. So those are totally options. There are also a number of virtual courses. I train people in this work. People go to my website, they'll see virtual courses, some that I've already taught. Some are training, some are not. And I'm actually currently teaching a 6-month virtual course. It's the most in-depth course I've taught taught from a soul perspective that is not a training. We're meeting live 3 times a month. If people want to know more, just please go to my website and contact us. We're happy to answer questions. Just a few thoughts, and I don't want to jabber on too long. I want other questioners to be able to step in. If you're an earth, and this is a little hard just to give it to you generically, but if you're an earth-based soul, you probably operate fairly well. Now, what does that mean? But you operate fairly well in the human body. If you're an interplanetary soul, you struggle more in the human body with energy, with health issues, with just challenges to function in this human container that as an IP soul, it's not your norm. Lastly, if you're an angelic realm soul, your entire persona and orientation to life is pure love, and compassion. I'm not an angelic realm soul. It's not that I don't have love and compassion, but that's not my sort of almost complete orientation to life. So anyway, that's a just quick thumbnail sketch.
Yeah, thank you. And there may be other questions, and I'm also curious, sort of zooming out right now, collectively, what we're going through collectively. And I went to school in Boulder, and I'm, the fires out there are, on my heart.
Yes.
But it's almost, I think a lot of us are seeing this time that we're going through in the country as like a karmic cleansing, and that it's a very, very turbulent time. And all of this stuff needs to come to the surface so that we can clear it out. And I'm just curious how when you zoom out and you look at some of these factors, including, the fires, including the political situation, how do you see it from the evolution of the collective soul, or the soul of humanity, or even the soul of the United States?
Yeah, Patricia, that's a great question. I mean, obviously the political situation and the fires are related because, and it's going to be very, very clear. I happen to be a Democrat, and I've always been a Democrat. If we don't take care of each other and take care of this planet, if we start subdividing into this group's okay, but that group's not okay, or this way of life is okay, but that way of life is not okay, as the guides observe our planet, I'm not going to say I think, I know, because at times I hear my own guides. I have a couple of people I know very well that are deeply intuitive and can tap into the higher realm. The higher realm is in consternation, I'll say, in a conundrum of what in the world, how do we guide these humans? Because they can't come down here and fix us, but they can guide us. I think, Patricia and everybody else, we're at a crossroads.
Yeah.
I think we are. You would imagine which presidential candidate I support. We are fighting for the not just the soul. We are fighting for the soul of this nation. I think we are. But we're fighting for the soul of the planet too. It's like, as COVID increases, sadly, and it's not just increasing in the U.S., it's obviously increasing abroad as well. It's almost like these guides are, looking down, observing us, and it's like, what decisions are they going to make? And so
right.
what are we going to do?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We have a question from Kyle. I'm going to see if we can bring on Kyle and invite her to turn on. And let's see. Hang on just a minute. There is Kyle. Now we should be able to see Kyle. Kyle, can you join us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We'd like to see you. You don't want us to see you.
No, I want you to. Although I threw up my profile picture for when I didn't want to be seen, but right now I don't. Oh, wait, here.
Yeah, click on it.
Yes.
There you are.
I look much better in my picture, but that's okay. Okay, Linda, my question is, you talked, and I remember you saying this one time when you had spoken before about how we're not on Earth. All of it isn't on Earth. Like part of it is in the divine realm, which I forgot, and it was neat to remember that. And but then we were talking about like the relationships. It made me think, does that mean if part of us is up on the other level, that we are like currently also having relationships with the people in our lives who have passed already, who are up there? Like, are we having a relationship with them in heaven? Let's just call it that. That like I'm not aware of.
Oh, I love that question, Kyle. That's a wonderful question. Basically, the answer is yes. And I'll just put a little twist on it for you. Not only does our higher self have the ability? I'll pick my father, for example. My dad's on the other side. Not only does my higher self have an ability to have a relationship with my dad's higher self in the higher realm, we also serve, we work together. If just to pull this out of the air, but if my father's soul and my soul have a task, which is the way it works at the higher self level, we take on responsibilities. Dad and I may be working together in the spiritual realm on an important topic, on coming up with a plan for maybe some earth issue or problem. And, we are, as souls, Dad and I, we are assisting Earth as much as we can through guidance. So the answer, Kyle, is yes.
That's great. I mean, I feel like that just added like this whole new level to my life, because I'm thinking of my dad too. And like, I always talk to him and I ask him for stuff and I'm like, come on, Dad. But I always think of it as sort of like a one-way street. I don't think that like part of me is up there actually working with him. So that is so cool to think of.
Good. I'm glad you asked that. That's why I love questions, because you bring out things I haven't even talked about. I love that. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. I was going to share something and ask your perspective, Linda. In recent times, it seems like there has been an increase in both negative forces and positive forces. You see what I'm saying? It's like not just, obviously today there are more people who are sort of conscious, evolved, I don't want to say educated, but enlightened. More people take an interest in spiritual development and all of that, far more than there used to be. Think back when we were kids, some of the things we talk about now, we would really get some eye rolls back then. Today, it's very common. So there's no doubt a growth in spiritual development within our country and probably around the world. But at the same time, there is definitely a growth in people who want to go very much in the other direction. So it's almost seeming that both of these are increasing, and we're reaching a point to where there's going to have to be a tipping point in one direction or the other. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, Joe, in so many ways, I think we are at a tipping point. I think we're at a tipping point, even, we're 2 weeks and a couple of days from the presidential election, as I'm sure we all know. How could we not know? Our email boxes get filled up with 20,000 political emails. I think we are at a tipping point. And let me see if I can put some perspective to this. Some of this may surprise some of you. Because I live in this world of soul and regression week in and week out with clients, but it's also, essentially my life too. So if we think about soul evolution, and again, some of you may go, really? What I've learned time and time again from clients, if we think about the Earth's population, and we think about evolution. Okay. So, and when we're more evolved versus less evolved, please don't see that as, I'm just busting my buttons because I'm more evolved versus less evolved. No, it takes a lot of lifetimes to slog through becoming more evolved as a soul. And we take on greater responsibility when we're more evolved. Of the Earth, so let's put soul evolution on a scale from 0 to 10. Evolved souls are a 7 and above. And the percent of the population that is a 7 and above is approximately 5 to 7% of the people on the planet. Only about 5 to 7% of the human population are evolved souls. And so the bottom line is we're living on a planet of adolescent, the predominance of an adolescent level of evolution souls, which puts a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of us. It's probably most of us in this group are 7s to 10s, of, those of us that are 7s to 10s. But the reason that things look so lopsided in terms of perspective is because predominantly Earth isn't populated by evolved souls. So, we've come to this tipping point, and it's, how can I put it? How much influence do more evolved souls have? How much willingness to learn do the less evolved souls have? I would hazard to say that those people that believe that we can categorize people and say, well, you're okay because your skin is this color, or you're okay because your sexual orientation is this or that. Those are less evolved souls. And so it's tricky. You might say, well, why isn't the planet populated by more evolved souls? But I think, how can I put it? It's kind of funny. I'm sort of getting a download about this, but it's hard to put words to it. There's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders to move the planet forward. And, the Earth has been at a tipping point many different times. If we go back into Christianity at the time of the life of Jesus, I think we were at a tipping point. And I don't think we figured it out back then. I think we sort of failed the tipping point. So we're there again.
Well, in fact, one of our online programs you can see on our website is called What Can Pandemics Teach Us? And it was an interview by a previous rector at St. Paul's Church, where we have our meetings, the Reverend Cliff Cutler, and he even likened it at other pandemics during the 12th and 13th century, for example. And during that time, they even saw, he called it a flourishing of mystics. The very act of the pandemic seemed to bring out the spiritual instinct that things must be done, and we could easily be seeing that now.
Yeah.
So that's another perspective. And one other thing I wanted to share with you is a lot of people in the spiritual journey have a connection to Indian philosophy and religion, Buddhist, different things, to where there's a real belief in what we might call non-duality, you see. And so there is always, to me, a tension in there between how much of what we feel called to do we do to change the world versus being an observer and watching it play out. Now, the two are not mutually exclusive, obviously. And I've always been struck by the fact that some people feel called to be part of a political movement, a demonstration. But on the other hand, can we say that people who are monks and spend their life in prayer are not doing an equal service, you see, of a positive impact on our time? So there's the balance there between how much we're getting involved to change things versus being a caring observer and holding it in our heart and in our love for change. So for me, that because I am a student of non-duality and some of the Eastern traditions, and there's always an interesting tension there. In my younger days, I would tend to be out in the streets doing demonstrations. In the middle, I've done more in the way of writing letters and talking with people. As I get older, I tend to be more of the third option, which is to hold it in a place of love. And so I'm just sharing that for your perspective and how we go forward.
Well, I think that we'll always have some of those people who are more we might say the more ascetic types. And it's probably just who I am also as a person and as a soul. I believe we're at a point in time where if we don't take responsibility, I mean, getting out to vote is a key example.
Absolutely.
If we don't get out to vote and we want things to change, we need to stop complaining if we don't take responsibility.
Exactly.
So it's just my own bias that I think there's a leaning at this current point in time, and particularly in the U.S., to be active participants on the planet, to move, to progress beyond this point.
Right. Well, and that's sort of the title that we're looking at, live the life that is calling us. So there will be different callings. And you enumerated those earlier in your talk, which I thought were helpful. And also our program next month, I think, will be interesting because the title of it is Uniting Mysticism and, Action for Social Change. And so you see there is a combining of the mystical and the active, almost like from the West, you have different types of devotional yoga, you have active yoga, And so those are very interesting topics. Well, we don't want to keep you too long. This has been a wonderful time to have you together. So we want to thank you so much for being with us. It's been just wonderful. And before we sign off, we will say thanks again to you, and we'll keep in touch. And I will go ahead and also make a couple announcements. I think I mentioned to you already that the program coming up next month with Eileen Flanagan is a nationally known Quaker activist, award-winning writer, and she's going to be joining us for a program on United Mysticism and Activism for Social Change, which should be very relevant for our time. And keep in mind, there are a lot of resources on our website. We still also have our monthly spiritual sharing circle, which you can participate in through Zoom. We have our weekly mindful meditation, which we do through a conference call. And also there are a lot of other resources there at our website, contemporarymysticism.org. So we're so thankful for each one of you who have joined us. Whether you're joining us today as we have a live program or you're watching it later on through a recorded program, you're all a part of the Center family. And everybody who is here and is involved is helping us make these programs possible. So we thank you. We say until we meet again, stay safe, be love, and blessings in the days ahead. Namaste.